Hello, everybody, and welcome back to And the Gooby Goes Too. I know it has been a very long time since I last recorded and posted any content here. But what can I say? Sometimes these award seasons get the best of us and wipe us out completely, and we need a little bit of a break, which is definitely what this last Oscar season did to me. But I am back, and I am actually going to talk about my Tony Award predictions for this year. So, taking a bit of a detour to a new realm of my award season passion. Actually, the award show that started it all for me. The Tony Awards are definitely the most important to me in terms of the fact that they were what I made me fall in love with award show predicting, and musical theater has always been sort of my most passionate form of performative media, and it has always just meant a lot to me. The first Tony Awards that I really ever watched that I was truly invested in was the 2016 ceremony. So a big deal of a year, that was the year of Hamilton. That was the year that The Color Purple revival was out, and therefore that was the year that the world discovered who Cynthia Erivo was. That ceremony was immediately after the Pulse shooting in Orlando. So that Tony Awards was such just a massive deal, and it was also the first one that I truly predicted in, and really followed along with how I was doing in terms of predicting the winners and everything. And it really just kicked off my passion for punditry from there. Branching over to film, TV, everywhere else. So it's fun to always revisit here. This will be very fun because unlike the Oscars where I've seen everything, with the Tony Awards, I have not seen a single one of these eligible productions. So my predictions for these nominees are going to be based solely off of word of mouth and just passion buzz and the precursors that we have in the New York theater world, but they are not nearly as parallel as they are in the film and TV industries. So yeah, Tony nominations come out on Tuesday, May 4th in the morning. It is currently the evening of Saturday, May 2nd. So I am right under the wire here, but I just went through and wrapped up all of my predictions and decided I wanted to share them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about my predictions for this year's Tony nominees. All right, let's kick things off with Best Musical. To say that the pickings for Best Musical are slim this year would be an understatement, I would say. I think people were very relieved when Titanic announced that it was going to do its Broadway transfer this year, because otherwise this would have just been a very, very rough batch of new musicals to pick for this category. So overall, I think this is pretty chalk. Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York, Schmigadoon, The Lost Boys, Titanic. I do think those are the absolute locked four nominees. Since we have fewer than 9 eligible Best Musicals this year, we can only have 4 nominees for Best Musical as opposed to 5, which we often do get. So that's why we only have 4, if you didn't know. But yeah, I don't see Beaches or The Queen of Versailles getting even close to touching this. The reviews for both of those are just way too negative in comparison to even shows like Titanic and The Lost Boys that maybe had some mixed reviews, but they had a pretty good amount of positive reviews as well. So yeah, these are the 4 nominees for Best Musical for sure. I would absolutely put money on it, and so would pretty much all of Gold Derby. All right, next up we have Best Play. I would say somewhat slim pickings this year in comparison to others as well. This is definitely a much heavier revival year, especially for the plays. Again, we can only have 4 Best Play nominees because we only have 8 eligible plays here. And it's kind of interesting because so many of the revival plays are considered a revival only because of the classics rule and are technically making their Broadway debut, but do not fall within the criteria of meeting the rules to be considered an actual new play. So with all that being said, again, I think these 4 that I have predicted are pretty safe, that being Liberation, The Ballisters, Giant, and Little Bear Ridge Road. These 4 are pretty much the only plays that have been getting any nominations for anything all year. So far, Liberation has Drama League. It's an off-Broadway transfer, but it was nominated for the Drama Desk last year. It won the Outer Critics Circle last year, got a New York Times Critics pick. Ballisters nominated for every possible precursor this year. Giant nominated for Drama League, Outer Critics Circle, got the New York Times Critics Pick. And then Little Bear Ridge Road, hasn't been necessarily nominated for much. It only got the Outer Critics Circle nomination, but it also had the Critics Pick from New York Times. And then what really solidified this one for me was the fact that it just won the New York Drama Critics Circle Award. So that to me says that despite the fact that it closed pretty early in the season, the fact that it wasn't the most grandiose production, the Scott Rudin of it all, there is clearly a lot of passion for this playwright, and that's essentially who this award is for. So I do think at the end of the day, that is going to be the fourth slot for best play here, simply because the other four just don't stand a chance in my eyes. Looking at buzz, looking at reviews, just I don't see anyone else having any passion for these other four plays. So these four are my final prediction to be nominated for best play. Okay, on to musical revival. I think this is a very easy category: Cats, the Jellicle Ball, Ragtime, and the Rocky Horror Show. Yeah, I think it was coming down to between, was it going to be Rocky or was it going to be Chess for that third slot? And I think after the reviews for the Rocky Horror Show came out and word of mouth improved heavily for that production, that easily took the spot away from Chess. So I think it's going to be these three, and that is that for Best Musical Revival. And finally, for the production categories, we have Best Play Revival. Like I kind of hinted at earlier, this is definitely the toughest one just because there are the most eligible shows in this category compared to any of the others, and arguably like some of the best as well. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 New York Times critic picks within these nominees. Out of the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 shows that are here. So a lot to pick from. I think absolutely safe for sure are Death of a Salesman, Oedipus, and Becky Shaw. And then rounding out the 5, I have Joe Turner's Come and Gone and Bug. Again, those top 3 just aren't getting defeated. Like Death of a Salesman, it's Death of a Salesman. It's getting nominated, let alone the fact that this production is being lauded and praised so heavily. Becky Shaw, probably one of like the most well-reviewed productions of this entire category, easily getting in. And then Oedipus, just the whole concept of adapting that story to what it was for this production. Like, I just don't see how that doesn't land in here as well. And then so for Joe Turner's Come and Gone, I have that really just because it is the most, probably aside from Death of a Salesman, like the most star-studded kind of like expensive production that we have within this category this year. And I do think that does help a little bit when the production is at least decent. And it was, it did get the critics pick from the New York Times, got some pretty decent reviews overall, like some in the mid range, but like overall somewhat positive. Has been doing well with it got the Drama League nomination, Outer Critics Circle. Not that those like necessarily matter, but just in comparison, it has made a good showing. An August Wilson play, I think it's a good bet to say that would come in for a revival nomination as well. And then this 5th one, I am a little torn between 2. I did end up going with Bug. With that being, I was really torn because they've made it very clear now that like the play revival nomination and potential win like will go to the playwright if they were not eligible to be nominated for the Tony as a best new play. So for Bug in particular, it's a Tracy Letts play, somebody who is very well beloved within the New York theater industry, a Tony decorated actor and writer. To me, it just made sense that his name alone would pull him in here to be nominated for this play that he has not been eligible for before. That could be upset by Marjorie Prime. That was a very well-beloved production, but it closed so long ago. I am worried that it has been forgotten for the most part. And I think if it does get in here, it's going to be like its only nomination. So I have a hard time predicting that when I think Bug has a chance at some other categories as well. And I think just had bigger buzz, bigger word of mouth throughout the year, at least from what I could see. So these are the 5 that I'm predicting. And I have Marjorie Prime kind of right there, ready to take the slot from either Bug or potentially even Joe Turner's Come and Gone. But Yeah, those are my predicted 5 for Best Play Revival. All right, let's talk some acting. So we will kick it off with Best Actress in a Musical. So the 5 that I have predicted, I've got Casey Levy for Ragtime, Marla Mendel for Titanic, Christiane Pitts for Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York, Sarah Chase for Schmigadoon, and Stephanie Hsu for The Rocky Horror Show. Let's start with a conversation about Casey Levy. This woman has been a Broadway staple since like the early aughts, has been originating Broadway roles since like 2009 with Hair, the Hair revival, and has yet to ever be nominated for a single New York Theater Award. Ever. Ever. It is fucking crazy. It is about time that Casey Levy is getting some goddamn flowers for the work that she is doing. Gotta give her a shout out to my Canadian sister. She's from Hamilton, Ontario. Hamilton and Kitchener are like neighboring metro areas outside of Toronto. So obviously I have a bias towards her as well in that regard. But yeah, it's just very exciting that Casey Levy is finally in serious awards contention. And what better way to do so than recreating the role of Mother in Ragtime? So yeah, very safe there, 100%. If Casey Levy somehow gets snubbed, I swear to fucking God, like I'm gonna stop watching the Tony Awards. But anyway, with this Ragtime revival being so successful, so praised, like she's getting in, no problem. I got Marla Mendel. I do think she's pretty safe. It is a little interesting just because like some of the reviews weren't wild about her specific performance. I don't know. It sounded like she might have maybe been sick. Like some thought she was maybe phoning it in or just not giving it her all. I don't know. I do think though, like having. Oh, you know what? I can say that I did see something from this eligibility season because we saw Titanic off Broadway. Um, Having seen that production, I can only hope that she is very safe for a nomination because her performance is one of like the best exhibitions of comedic musical theater that I've ever seen. And it's very well deserved. Christiane Pitts, just the fact of Two Strangers being the quote unquote little show that could this year. I am a little nervous for her because like she did not get recognized by Drama Desk or Outer Critics Circle, which doesn't necessarily matter, but when her co-star Sam Tuddy is, it's just weird to me. But I do just think that the strength of her show and the fact that it's like just the two of them will make it fine for her to get in here. Sarah Chase for Schmigadoon. She's been showing up. I think she has a tough role in that show, just given that she's kind of like the straight woman. But I think fortunately she has the fact that Alex Brightman is even more of a straighter man in that show for her. That kind of gives her a leg up. And I have seen like a lot of reviews kind of praise her ability to like toe the line of being the outsider in this like bizarre musical theater world. So I think she gets in. And I also think Schmigadoon is going to have the best morning of all the new musicals this season. So why would she not get in if that were the case? And then for the 5th slot, so the eligibility team decided to shake shit up in the last minute because it was like 3 days ago that they were like, by the way, Stephanie Hsu and Andrew Durand are going lead, not featured. So upended a bunch of shit. It gave us 5 potential nominees in Best Actor instead of 4. It upset some races in this Best Actress race specifically. And I do think she's going to get this 5th slot. The reviews have been very kind for her and like have specifically been praising her other than like Luke Evans. I think she's been getting the most positive feedback from that production. I do think she has some waves that she's riding just from her success with Everything Everywhere All at Once that makes her a recognizable name, and just she's so likable and beloved that I think that like Tony voters would be excited to nominate her for this as well. I do think she's like definitely number 5 right now, and on her coattails are Jessica Vosk for Beaches and Leah Michelle for Chess. Jessica Vosk being fully a passion pick because they like her as a person. like, because there is no other merit for that show for her to like have the strength to get in. It is fully on the fact of how hard she is working to try and keep that show alive. But I don't even think that is enough, because I think like she would be really the only nomination for that show, and I just don't think she is a big enough name in the Broadway world to pull that off. That would be like a I can't think of like a good comparison right now. That's really hard to do for like lead actress in a musical to be your sole nominee for your show. And I just don't think Jessica Vosk is there quite yet. And then with Leah Michelle, I just don't think anyone cares enough about the performance or the show, honestly, to get her in there. So these are my five. Again, I think Leah Michelle and Jessica Vosk could upset here. And then the other three we just don't even need to talk about. So that's my prediction list for Best Actress in a Musical. Okay, on to Best Actor in a Musical. I think this is a bit more straightforward than Best Actress. So the five I have are the top five in the odds on Gold Derby. So Josh Henry in Ragtime, Brandon Uranowitz in Ragtime, Luke Evans for The Rocky Horror Show, Sam Tuddy for Two Strangers, and Nicholas Christopher for Chess. I just don't think anyone else here is a threat. I think we were going to have a hard time picking like the number four if there were only going to be four nominees. But now that we have five because of Andrew Duran getting knocked to lead, I think it makes it a pretty easy top five. I don't see anybody here upsetting. Like, I don't think LJ Bennett has had any type of buzz for the Lost Boys from what I've seen. Alex Brightman, like, no one cares about that performance. In Schmigadoon, Aaron Tveit, he's being overshadowed by Leah and Nicholas Christopher, and Andrew Duran, like, I think would be the fun, like, upset if anybody were to sneak in. But again, I don't think anybody in this five is weak enough for him to do that. So these are my predicted five for Best Actor in a Musical. Okay, let's talk Actress in a Play. This one is a little bit tricky. We have enough for there to be five nominees this year. Was also a change because it was only going to be four until Anika Nani Rose got deemed eligible for lead actress instead of supporting in The Ballasters. So it made it interesting because I think people were confident on like four, and now with the fifth, it's like, okay, who's it going to be? So who's safe? Leslie Manville, definitely like the front runner for this award period for Oedipus. Laurie Metcalf, I think, is extremely safe for Little Bear Ridge Road. I don't even think yeah, the odds have her at number 6, which I think is crazy. If you go read the reviews for Little Bear Ridge Road, like, I think the New York Times article title calls out Laurie Metcalf in the fucking title. And like every single review is just a rave about Laurie Metcalf's performance in that production. So I don't know how she doesn't get in. Rose Byrne, I think, is pretty safe for Fallen Angels. Obviously coming off a great wave of her Oscar campaign for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, got glowing reviews for her performance in Fallen Angels here, so I think she's absolutely fine and in. And then Carrie Coon for Bug, I think, is pretty safe as well. I think she had a pretty good wave this past year with The White Lotus, and with her husband being the playwright of Bug. Like, I think that just gives good faith and everything to voters. That they'll be eager to vote for her. She's like a true like New York actress. Like I think she'll be fine getting in here. And then it's like, what do we do with number 5? I'm going with Jean Smart for Call Me Izzy for no good reason. The show opened last July. It closed, I think, before the new year. Yeah, definitely like well before the new year that show closed. She hasn't been nominated for anything this year so far, but when I go back and look at the reviews, like every single one, even like the reviews that were mixed, mid, even borderline negative for the play itself, like were just completely adoring and loving for Jean Smart's performance with that material. And I think she has some steam given that, you know, the final season of Hacks is airing right now. If you're watching the season of Hacks, you know that the season started with her having a mission to complete a fucking EGOT, and also had an episode with them in New York because she's trying to get her show at Madison Square Garden. So maybe that's overthinking it and like allowing too many coincidences to drive my thought process here, but I think it's possible. I think people may look back on that production and say, you know what? Jean Smart was really great in this play, and we should nominate her. But there are definitely a couple folks knocking at her tail. Um, Kelly O'Hara as the counterpart in Fallen Angels to Rose Byrne could definitely sneak in there as well. Anika Nani Rose for the Ballisters. I guess I do have the Ballisters doing quite well on nomination morning, but I don't have her getting in here. I just feel like from the reviews I saw, it's such an ensemble heavy piece. Now, granted, I do currently have, I think, 3 of its supporting performers getting in, but that to me makes more sense than a lead getting in, just from the vibe I've picked up on how the casting and performances in the show go. And then I mean, honestly, Susanna Flood for Liberation, just on the strength of Liberation itself, but I don't have any other good reason to like think that that can happen. And then of course, Io Debris for Proof. The odds have her getting in. I just do not think it is happening. I think Proof proved to be a bit of a letdown with this revival production. And I do fear that a lot of people are going to be voting with Mary Louise Parker's performance in that play in the back of their mind. So these are the 5 I'm going with for Best Actress in a Play, and we will see what happens. Stay tuned. Okay, and then last for the lead acting performers, we've got Best Actor in a Play. So my predictions, I have John Lithgow for Giant, Mark Strong for Oedipus, Daniel Radcliffe for Every Brilliant Thing, Nathan Lane for Death of a Salesman, and Namir Smallwood for Bug. People who I think are very safe, John Lithgow and Nathan Lane for sure. The other 3 I think are okay. I could see worlds where like all 3 of these could be somewhat weak though. Mark Strong, hasn't picked up any precursor recognition, but I do think he's just been overshadowed by Leslie Manville for the most part. But I do think Oedipus overall is strong enough that he should be fine getting in here. And the reviews were pretty fair and positive towards him as well. Daniel Radcliffe, I think, will be riding the wave of his win from 2 years ago and should be fine as well. And then for number 5, I was torn. I ended up going with Namir Smallwood for Bug. When I was reading through the reviews for Bug, I just noticed that like they were so heavily focused on like Carrie Coon and Namir Smallwood as an acting pair, and that felt important to me. Again, like I don't think Namir Smallwood is as recognizable of a name to the nominators and voters necessarily compared to Carrie Coon. But it did seem like that character connection was very pivotal to both of their performances. And so to me, that seems like, okay, I think that would be like kind of a fun recognition nomination for somebody that like you're maybe not expecting, but was definitely like a key performer within that production. Who could be a threat here? Maybe John Bernthal for Dog Day Afternoon. The reviews from that play were very not great, but there did seem to be some love for his performance regardless. Adrian Brody for Fear of 13, I think, is dead in the water. Will Harrison for Punch, he got some love, but that show's been closed, and I don't know. That's why I ended up going with Namir Smallwood for Bug, because no one else made sense to me here. And like everyone else here on Gold Derby, like Art, like they hated it. Waiting for Godot, they hated it. Micah Stock for Little Bear Ridge Road would be an interesting one too. That's actually very tempting. He's probably like my number 6. The issue there might be is that like I think reading the reviews, there was praise for the fact that like he was able to manage like going toe to toe with Laurie Metcalf on stage, but it did seem overwhelmingly in Laurie Metcalf's favor in most of the reviews, and that Micah was just overshadowed. I think he would be a cool nomination. So I would look out for him if Little Bear Ridge Road ends up having a very good morning. But for now, these are the 5 that I'm going to go for Best Actor in a Play. All right, into the featured acting categories. We will kick it off with Featured Actress in a Musical. Excuse me. This is probably like one of the, I don't want to say roughest, but I'm going to say roughest featured actress in a musical categories I've seen in a very long time. I feel like there's no front runner. I feel like nobody knows who's getting nominated. I think it's all over the place. You look at, so like Drama Desk and Outer Critics Circle have gone genderless with the acting category. So they just have like performer in XYZ production. Outer Critics Circle separates it by Broadway and off-Broadway. So their best featured performer in a Broadway show is 5 men. Like that's how undecided we are on featured actress is that like 5 featured actor uh candidates got into that category with Outer Critics Circle. And the 5 that I predicted, only one of them has a single precursor nomination. And it's just so weird because this is usually my favorite category because, like, it's usually so strong and, like, multiple women are, like, very much duking it out. And that's just not the case this year. And I think that makes it more fun. But so who I have Tempress Chastity Moore for Cats the Jellicle Ball, Nichelle Lewis for Ragtime, Isabel McCalla for Schmigadoon, Mackenzie Kurtz for Schmigadoon, and Rachel Dratch for Rocky Horror. So let's talk about how my twisted brain got here. Tempress Chastity Moore playing Grisabella just seems right that she would get in. I think it's tough with Jellicle Ball because even with the off-Broadway production, Dreda Shields was really the only person who got any recognition for performing. But the reviews do call out Tempress's Grisabella, especially her rendition of Memory, as a highlight of the show. And I think Cats the Jellicle Ball is going to do so well on nomination morning that it really does just make sense that Tempress would come with that. Moving on, so Nichelle Lewis for Ragtime. Another one that's tough because she's been overshadowed by like the 3 leads of the show, that those being, Joshua, Brandon, and Casey. But there's been a lot of love for her portrayal of Sarah. Big shoes to fill for any revival of this, just, coming from Audra McDonald originating that role. But I think this is a good redemption opportunity for her, because I think she was probably pretty close with getting nominated for The Wiz, but with how hard that production got dragged, she ended up missing. And I think now she's in a production that's at equal caliber with her talents and can pick up the nomination in this case. And then I've got the 2 Schmigadoon ladies, both who are standouts within different acts of the show. The reviews loved and adored Mackenzie Kurtz's performance. And I, just from what I've read and seen, like, it seems like she's a bigger presence in Act 1. And then Isabel McCalla is a bigger presence in Act 2. The reviews, some of them also did very much like Isabel McCalla in the show. I think she has been building her name very quickly within the Broadway world, The Prom, Water for Elephants, and just like never quite had her moment to, again, kind of like a caliber of a show matching her talent. Like The Prom is a fantastic show, but like the role of Alyssa Green just wasn't going to be something that was going to get her awards recognition. And then, Water for Elephants, I think, just was a disservice to her with her performing potential. And I think Schmigadoon finally gave her the chance to like shine with everything that she's capable of doing. And I think the fact that she has a stronger presence in Act 2 will help, because I think that like voters will leave the show with her on their mind, since just based off of recency bias. So that's why I've got the 2 of them. And then I do have Dratch for Rocky Horror, mostly because I just didn't really have a good alternative. I know a lot of people have Shoshana Bean for Lost Boys, but like, y'all, she got the Drama League nod, and that's it. I don't think the Lost Boys is going to be too heavily favored in acting. I don't have anybody acting wise getting in for the Lost Boys. I think that's really going to be like a below the line like recognition for this show. For the most part. And like the reviews, just everything, like nobody's talking about Shoshana in this show, from what I can see anyway. But I think people are talking about Rachel Dratch in Rocky Horror, and that she has greatly improved since preview started. She's a previous nominee for POTUS, playing a sadistic goofball, which is basically what she's doing in Rocky Horror as well. She has a hard job, having to moderate all the call outs and everything. And so I think that she has a really good shot here. If there is going to be an upset, I guess it's Shoshana Bean, maybe. Otherwise, I just don't know, because I feel like nobody else is talking about any of these performances. Who I have seen a lot? I have seen, where is she? Emma Sophia. I have seen so much of Emma Sophia on TikTok with Cats the Jellicle Ball, and she's great. That'd be a fun second nomination for Cats if that were to happen. But anyway, against most of my capable judgments, these are my 5 predicted nominees for Best Featured Actress in a Musical. Okay, featured actor in a musical. A little more straightforward than featured actress, fortunately, so this should go a little bit quicker. So I have Andre DeShields for Cats Jellicle Ball, Ben Levi Ross for Ragtime, Leighton Williams for Titanic, Max Clayton for Schmigadoon, and Sidney James Harcourt for Cats the Jellicle Ball. I feel pretty confident about the first 4. Like Andre getting in, likely a front runner to win, honestly. Easy. Ben Levi Ross for Ragtime, I think pretty easy too. I think they're just gonna go like ape shit over the actors for Ragtime, and he should have no problem getting in here whatsoever. Someone a lot of people aren't talking about here and is number 7 on the odds, and was a lot lower a few days ago, is Leighton Williams for Titanic. And honestly, in some ways, I feel safer about Leighton Williams getting in than Marla Mandel for Best Actress. The reviews unanimously call out Leighton as like the highlight of the production. Specifically, you know, the iceberg moment with River Deep Mountain High. Leighton's photo in that moment is like one of like the key article photographs for the New York Times review. You know, Leighton got the Drama Desk nomination, won the Olivier for the West End production, which we don't take into consideration all the time, but it just speaks volumes. And so I think like y'all, you should have Leighton Williams on your ballot because I think they're fucking getting in. Max Clayton, who kind of ended up like really being a surprise for me. Like I had just not heard much about him coming into this production. And then all of a sudden, he gets a Drama Desk nomination, he gets an Outer Critics Circle nomination, and I think people are just ready to show this ensemble boy some love. You know, he's been working so fucking hard for a very long time. The man ran past me and was so, oh my God, I gotta tell the story now. So my friend Joey and I saw Moulin Rouge in January of 2020, MLK weekend. I had gotten to the theater at like 5:30 in the morning, waited in single digit temperatures to get us standing room tickets for that fucking show. So we were in the standing room row. And so with that production, you know, the ensemble's constantly running past you. And we had Max Clayton and his meaty thighs running right past us, like within inches. So that's my connection to Max Clayton. Anyway, very happy for him because he has been working very hard, and I think this is finally his moment to get some recognition formally. And so I do think he'll be getting that Tony nomination. And then I have Sidney James Harcourt for Cats the Jellicle Ball. I heard a couple of people just talking about how this would be an interesting nomination. There are people who are saying that like his ability to like hold the show together is very impressive. And again, I think that they are going to be pretty wild about the Jellicle Ball on nomination morning. And again, like I say this too, like I struggle to find an alternative to put in here. I think the closest is Ali Luis for The Lost Boys. The reviews were pretty kind for him and basically said that like some of the negative reviews said that like his performance was a saving grace. You know, he missed for the Who's Tommy, even though he was getting a lot of praise for that performance. So maybe this is a redemption nomination. I don't know. Again, I do think that like I don't think any performers are getting in for the Lost Boys, but I do think he might be the most likely. So he is my number 6, kind of floating around there right now. But otherwise, those are my 5 predicted nominees for Best Featured Actor in a Musical. Okay, Featured Actress in a Play. This one is also a little tricky just because of the sheer number of possible nominees there are. However, let's talk about the 5 that I have. So I've got Laurie Metcalf for Death of a Salesman, Mary Louise Burke for The Ballasters, Betsy Item for Liberation, Linda Amon for Becky Shaw, and Maria Cristina Oliveras for The Ballasters. I feel great about Laurie Metcalf for Death of a Salesman. I think she might be winning another Tony for it. And yeah, so she's at the top for me. Otherwise, I don't feel great about any of the others just because at this point, I'm kind of going off of strength of the respective productions. You know, which is why I have the double nomination for The Ballasters. You know, Mary Louise Burke is called out often as like a highlight of that show. So it made sense for her to be like the acting nomination for the Ballisters if there was to be one singled out. Um, I had Cynthia Nixon as my number 5 from Marjorie Prime, but like I just that didn't make sense to me for that to be the only nomination for this show. So that's why I decided to throw in Maria Cristina Oliveras, because she at least had a Drama Desk nomination for the Ballisters. Betsy Item for Liberation. Again, the strength of Liberation as a show, her being singled out as like really maybe the best performance in that show. Just the most to work with. She was nominated for the Outer Critics Circle for the off-Broadway production last year. She's a beloved theater actress, has been in Tony conversations before, so I don't think it's that out of pocket for her to like get in here with all those considerations added up. And then Linda Amon for Becky Shaw. Again, kind of like the singled out performance recognized for Becky Shaw. Such a strong revival, such strong reviews. Another strong actress, like beloved within this industry. So they all make sense. You know, some of these ones are hard to pass up, but like I just don't think June Squibb is getting in because, again, like I just don't think Marjorie Prime, I think, has just gotten overshadowed by everything else, unfortunately. Carrie Young for Proof, I would love to see her get in for her 5th year in a row. Oh, that'd be so wild. But I think this is finally where she falls off her train, just because of the weakness of this production alone. However, she does have Is God Is coming out in theaters on May 15th. So at least she's got that going for her. Very exciting. And then, yeah, otherwise, like, nobody makes sense. Like, Jessica Hecht, sure, you know, they'll nominate her if they can. But again, I just don't think they like this play enough, even though she's singled out as like a positive part of it. And yeah, again, I don't think like any of these ladies from Liberation make sense like to be called out individually. I don't know if anyone else for Becky Shaw does. But yeah, so for the reasons I said, those are the 5 I'm going with. There you go. Okay, closing out the acting categories, let's talk featured actor in a play. I don't understand why Ruben Santiago Hudson is at number 6 in the odds. He should be everyone's number 1, honestly, because I think he has a very good chance to win, if I'm being completely honest. Probably one of like the most beloved actors within like the top 10 here, and every single review for Joe Turner's Come and Gone, even the negative mixed ones, calling him out as like the highlight of the show. He's the only person within like all of these potential nominees to be nominated for every potential precursor, Drama League, Drama Desk, Outer Critics Circle. He's there. He's in. Like, y'all, put him in. Don't follow these Gold Derby motherfuckers because they don't know what they're talking about. Next up, Christopher Abbott for Death of a Salesman. I just think it's a role that gets nominated. It makes sense. And I think this production is strong enough for him to get in as well. Let's see who else. I've got Alden Ehrenreich for Becky Shaw, again kind of going off of the strength of the show there. I've got K. Todd Freeman for Death of a Salesman, another role that has been nominated for the show before. I don't have much good basis other than that to go off of here. And again, just some of it is I don't have great alternatives. I need to get rid of Elliot Levy here because I did switch in Richard Thomas for the Ballisters. And yeah, those are my 5 for best featured actor in a play. Again, Elliot Levy could be kind of there. I did see some reviews that like straight up hated his performance though. So I don't know about him. I think a lot of people have him in because he won the Olivier for Giant. But again, we can't count Olivier performances as like 1-to-1 for the Tonys. Other people who could be nipping there, Charlie Thurston for Liberation, if they do decide to like try and single out some of these performances. I don't know, Danny Burstein from Marjorie Prime. I think he's there as a name. Like, I don't think anyone from that show is going to get in, sadly. And aside from that, like, I don't think there's much else here to look at. So we'll just have to see what happens. But those are my 5 for best featured actor in a play. Okay, director of a musical. I think this one's pretty easy. I think we have 6 possibilities here. People that I think are safe. Zylan Livingston and Bill Rauch for Cats of the Jellicle Ball. Absolutely, probably winning. No doubt about it. I think Michael Arden for The Lost Boys is pretty safe. I think based off of his name, his success over the past couple years, you know, between oh my god, I'm blanking on the show that won Best Musical last year. Why am I doing that? Yeah, you know, the musical that won Best Musical last year, and then Parade, and just the Michael Arden of it all is why I think he's getting in. And I think despite how people feel about like the book and the score of that show, I think there is a lot of respect for the craft. And that will carry him to that nomination, probably with little issue. I'm gonna take a drink of water while I try and think. Maybe happy ending. Oh my god, that's the fucking show. Jesus Christ. What is your issue, Alex? Did he win last year? Slight detour, y'all. I need to know if Michael Arden won the Tony last year too. Because I can't remember. Yeah, he did. Of course he did. Well, he was a producer on the Sunset Boulevard revival. Interesting. So he won 3 Tony Awards last year. That's fucking crazy. Anyway, yeah. Was he really? The Deaf West production of Spring Awakening Tony nominated? We're going on a rabbit hole, y'all. Sorry about it. Yeah, he was. I didn't realize that. That's cool. Anyway, Michael Arden, I think he's fine. Christopher Gattelli for Schmigadoon, I'm a little concerned because he hasn't been nominated anywhere. And like, you know, I think he could ride the wave of being up for Death Becomes Her last year. And again, I think Schmigadoon's going to have a really good morning. So I do see him sneaking in and being okay. Laird de Bessonet for Ragtime, you know, bringing another successful New York City Encore's production to a Broadway stage. And I think this one probably being considered one of the more successful versions of that for her. Definitely see her getting in. And then I have Sam Pinkleton for Rocky Horror getting in at number 5. I think just for his like wild vision of making that production work in Studio 54. You know, he's also riding a wave of having won last year for Oh Mary. So I think it makes sense. The only other potential nominee I see here is Tim Jackson for Two Strangers, but he has also not been nominated anywhere. And I do think that that show is like not strong enough that it could easily miss a director nomination. I think this will be big because, I mean, right now I have the 3 revival nominees getting in and then 2 of the new musicals. And so I think whatever new musical doesn't get a Best Director nomination, we can probably count out for the possibility of winning Best Musical. And then these other options, you know, Titanic, Chess, Queen of Versailles, Beaches, just I just don't see a chance in hell for those happening, honestly. So yeah. So I think it's Tim Jackson looking at taking away one of these 5, but I feel pretty okay about these 5. All right, and now Best Director of a Play. I think this is a little bit tougher, just given the number of options we have. But the 5 I have, I've got Robert Icke for Oedipus, Joe Mantello for Death of a Salesman, Kenny Leon for The Ballisters, Whitney White for Liberation, and Trip Cullman for Becky Shaw. Honestly, I think Robert Icke and Joe Mantello are the safest bets for sure. Like Robert Icke for bringing this adaptation to the stage, Joe Mantello for just the successful retelling of this ultimate American classic. And then the other 3 I think like could be at risk, but like Kenny Leon is just such a safe bet nowadays, especially for like a show that was so positively received, like The Ballisters. And again, it's his like genius touch of getting actors to work together and doing incredible things on stage. Whitney White for Liberation, you know, I think a lot of respect for her coming out of Yaya's African Hair Braiding. And then, you know, she got some recognition for directing the off-Broadway production last year. Again, this show being so strong that I could see her like coming in easily. And then Trip Cullman for Becky Shaw, I think just based off the strength of Becky Shaw in general. People kind of on the coattails, Nicholas Heitner for Giant. I don't know. I don't feel like I saw like enough praise. Like I feel like Giant's kind of right in the middle of the pack and like too weak in terms of the best new plays and then like up against the revivals in this category as well. I just don't think quite has it. Marjorie Prime, again, I don't think is happening unless it has like a miraculously great morning. David Cromer for Bug, maybe, but again, I don't know. At my number 6, I actually have Debbie Allen for Joe Turner's Come and Gone. Kind of based off of name alone, kind of based off of like, I just don't see another great option here. But even like a lot of the reviews were kind of like not thrilled about her staging and thought she left a lot of dead space around with this production. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty okay about these 5 that I have for Best Director of a Play. Okay, Best Original Score. So I think a big thing everyone was waiting on with this category was whether or not Schmigadoon was going to be deemed eligible. It was as of a few days ago, so we can definitely say that more than likely our 3 Best Musical nominees that have an eligible score will be nominated. So Two Strangers, Schmigadoon, The Lost Boys, and then it's like, what are the other two? I do think we're not getting 5 musicals. Like, we're not gonna get Queen of Versailles and Beaches unless it's a year like the Almost Famous year, where like people thought there's no way all of these musicals get nominated and they did anyway. I don't think it happens this year. I do think Queen of Versailles gets in just because it's Stephen Schwartz for sure. But I don't think Beaches gets it. And so it's like, which play? And I think it's Death of a Salesman, just based off the reviews and everything I read. Is that's the play that has like the best use of music in it that could be considered in this category. So these are my 5 for best score. And then best book is even easier. I just have the 4 that I think are going to be nominated for best musical. So Two Strangers, Titanic, Schmigadoon, and The Lost Boys. And then finally, finally for what I'll be recording, I am not going to do the below the line categories. I don't have nearly enough credential to like talk about those and predict them. And Gold Derby doesn't have them. So I don't have an easy way to list my predictions and show you all. So we're going to end it with choreography. I have the top 5 in the odds here. So Cats, Jellicle Ball, Schmigadoon, The Lost Boys, Rocky Horror Show, and Ragtime. I just think it makes sense. I don't think anything else really puts up much of a fight. Again, like some of these categories are so crazy this year, y'all. Like it feels like we're like forcing a group of 5 with some of these, and it's going to be really interesting just to see like what happens on nomination morning. So yeah, those are my nominee predictions for best choreography. Okay, one last thing I want to talk about. So my loving husband sent me a TikTok earlier this evening talking about a bunch of new Oscar rulings that just came out apparently. So I want to just talk through some of them and talk about how they'll impact next year's Oscars, because some of them are really fun. So this one I did know about already. Like AI is banned, so like AI cannot be considered potential nominee for any Oscar category. That's great. We don't need to talk about that any further. This is a big one. So actors can get multiple nominations. So that was already a thing, meaning like split between categories. So like you could get nominated in like Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress, but you weren't ever allowed to get nominated for 2 performances within like either Best Actress or Best Supporting Actress in that same category. So that's caused issues before, where people have to like strategically campaign and like figure out how they're gonna like get themselves nominated once or twice, like depending on what they have available for them that year. This is really fun this year because Sandra Hüller specifically has 2 potential lead actress performances coming out this year. So with this ruling, it'll be interesting to see like what they do with that and see if they like actually try and campaign her to get both in. And that'd be pretty badass if she's the first person ever to get 2 nominations in the same acting category or supporting, because we also have her in Digger and Project Hail Mary. So Homegirl's up for 4 potential nominations this year, which is just fucking nuts. That would be absolutely wild. The casting category was expanded, so now up to 3 people can be listed as the nominee / potential winner within the category instead of just 2. That's cool. Officially, they're set on cinematography being a short list of 20 every year, which I think is great. Let's nominators and voters focus their attention to like a set group rather than like such an overwhelming amount of film, to try and figure out like what cinematography is, the most worthy of a nomination. This is the biggest part, the international film rulings. So non-English films can now qualify by winning major festival awards, not just by a country's individual submission. Countries can submit multiple films now, and the award now goes to the directors. So this is all just very big. I low-key need to fact check this. I do trust it from what I see on here. But that's wild because, prior to, it was always every country gets to pick one film that they're going to push for consideration for a nomination for Best International Feature. And then like the country is given the nomination, the country gets the award. If they win, they can only submit one, and an international film can only get into international feature if like their respective country picks it for submission. So this whole thing is very interesting now. And I think it's great because I think part of why they're doing it is like the way that the international feature races have like really exploded over the past few years. And I'm excited to see what this does, because it kind of helps like allow the best films to get into Best International Feature rather than like a couple having to be sat out because either the country that they're from like didn't pick them for consideration, or like they just weren't able to get in because they were from the same country. So this is going to be really cool. I'm going to be very fascinated to see what this does. So anyway, it is 11 o'clock, so I need to wrap up. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for tuning in. I've missed recording. I'm going to be doing some more. Maybe I'll do a Tony reactions to the nominations. We'll see. but we'll be talking Emmys soon with TV season starting to wrap up. There's so much good TV going on right now. Um, and then eventually we'll talk Tony winner predictions too before the ceremony on June 7th. I think it's the 7th. Yeah, June 7th. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful night. Ta ta.